Yeah, based upon all of the information that we've been provided by the Department of Public Health, the Attorney General's office, it looks to be approximately 9,000 impacted cases here. And what we're doing is we're working affirmatively by assigning teams to both the district and Superior Court to identify all of those cases, not that just Annie Dukin worked on, but all of those cases since 2003 that were JP lab cases, or cases out of the Hinton laboratory.
Why look at every case from the lab?
Well, what we found through all of the discovery and information that's provided to us is that there are inadequacies and insufficiencies within the lab that went beyond Annie Dukin, which causes us concern as it relates to how justly and fairly these cases were worked on and then provided to us from the lab.
And we've spoken with some DAs who say that they've had to create almost what they're calling war rooms in their offices to go through all of these cases and continue to look at exactly how to proceed from here.
Yeah, we've prioritized custody cases, people who are in custody who've been convicted. Obviously, people's liberty is at stake and has been curtailed or taken away from them. That has to be a priority. So those are the cases that we've prioritized. But we're taking a look at everything across the board. We've created these working rooms, or war rooms, if you will, only because it provides space to segregate and identify the cases that our teams are working on. We've got specialized units that we've created where we have lawyers, appellate lawyers and trial lawyers, as well as paralegal and support staff who identify and prioritize just these cases. 3 full-time lawyers, 4 part-time lawyers, 1 support staff person full-time, and 1 paralegal full-time. Now, we've taken people in the office and diverted them to work on cases, but we've also hired some people so that we could bolster the team. It's difficult. You start with people who are understaffed, overworked, and underpaid, and you're asking them to do more in other areas where there was no fat here. Collectively, the district attorneys are very concerned about that because we have very lean budgets to begin with. We're dealing with a situation which had nothing to do with us in its making. We're having to do the best we can in dealing with it, but we haven't been provided any additional resources to deal with the problems yet.
Since you started reviewing the cases, do you know how many have been reviewed by a judge? And do you also have those separate special sessions in court for a judge to review these things?
We have a special session in the Superior Court in Woburn to deal with the Superior Court matters. We then have a session in every single district court. We have 10 district courts here in Middlesex that deal with the pending cases there. And there's also, for the district courts, a drug lab session set up in Cambridge where they're dealing with post-conviction matters.
And how many cases have you gone through then, do you know, in your special sessions, and how many folks may have been released because of this?
15 people have been released thus far. We have 250 cases that are presently active in those sessions in our courts. And of those 250 cases, approximately 50 have been resolved so far. So we've worked through about 20% of 250 cases. But as the math will dictate here, you have 250 cases in the sessions, you've got 9,000 approximate cases. We've got a long way to go. This will go on for years, both direct and collateral consequences, sure. I'd like to think, though, that we've spent several weeks now building to where we are so that we'll now be able to move more quickly. We'll now be able to move more cases through the system. And as far as this office is concerned, and my philosophy is concerned, as early as next week, we're probably going to be able to apply a more broad standard as it relates to how many cases we're just going to have to null pros or dismiss.
Really? So that you think more of them will be dismissed?
Oh, many more cases will be dismissed. As I said, we're prioritizing those custody cases, but as we identify cases at the Hinton lab in Jamaica Plain, and we realize that there were inadequacies and insufficiencies in practices, protocols, and policies, it may be that a wide swath, if not all of the cases that were done by the JP lab between 2003 and 2012 may not be prosecuted.
Do you think that compromises public safety?
Oh, it certainly compromises public safety. People who are being released, remember, aren't being released because they're innocent. Now, some of them may be, but the vast majority of cases we've looked at thus far are cases where the defendants did what's alleged. We just can't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, and or to go forward with a prosecution wouldn't be fair and just under the circumstances. So they may be released to the street, but it has little to do with guilt or innocence. It has more to do with failures of government, and particularly the Department of Public Health. We've certainly moved away from it being just one rogue chemist to a lab that had insufficient practices, policies, and protocols, to an extent that leads us to believe that there are going to be more cases that are compromised than just those that were analyzed or signed off on by Annie Ducan.
When you describe this to colleagues outside of Massachusetts, maybe, or colleagues who aren't district attorneys, what do you say? How do you talk about what happened at our drug lab?
Well, I talk about the frustration and how systemic a failure this has been, the frustration for law enforcement agents and law enforcement officers who are in harm's way every day trying to make the streets safe, and this type of back-end situation after they made their cases, make cases not prosecutable. That's frustrating, and it's extremely disconcerting.
Do you think that you're working to have a uniform system to make sure that these cases are handled the same, if they can be?
We always prioritize uniformity and consistency across Middlesex County. There's 1.5 million people here. We're the largest county in the state. It's urban, suburban, and rural. We want our decisions to be uniform and consistent across the county. I would hope that justice isn't zip code driven, that we come up with some standards that provide for fairness and justice as it relates to how we're dealing with these cases. I'm confident in how we're dealing with them here, and I'm always open to hearing from the defense bar about ways that we're approaching this, and I've listened.